welcome to our Golden 20s podcast. My name is Tegan and I'm joined with my co-host Sadie.
Hello.
And we are recording in person in my dining room with the windows open because it's almost August now.
Yeah. So actually this episode drops August 1st.
OMG.
We love that. Tegan's curated the perfect vibe as she always does.
Mm-hmm.
And I always feel like I need to set the scene for you guys for what we're recording with. She's got her taper candles lit in the middle of her dining table, little coffee and tea. She even gave me a cinnamon bun.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just good vibes over here.
I'm glad. Yeah.
It's so funny though, because tonight we're going to a Fall Out Boy concert.
Yeah.
I'm like, that is the exact opposite vibe from like the little wholesome afternoon that we're having recording the podcast. So we're multi-dimensional girls, diverse, ticking all the boxes.
Well, and speaking of vibes, we're talking this week about things that are killing your vibe. Because this has been a trend I've seen on TikTok that's like low vibe things you might not realize are low vibe. And yeah, what they mean by that is like things that are sucking your energy, making you feel bad, not filling your cup, making you feel like unattractive even. And so if this sounds kind of weird or like you don't know what we're talking about, I think once we get into examples, you'll be like, oh yeah, when I do that, I do feel low vibe.
Yeah. And you might not even realize these are low vibe things. Like some of these, which we'll get into in a minute, I was like, damn, I do the same thing.
Yeah.
Like seeing it on TikTok when it was a trend a few months back, I was like, oh my God, I do that too. And I never realized how that is a low vibe thing until somebody else pointed it out. And now I'm like, damn, and I feel like too, it's a big thing. Like especially if you're like any type of like spiritual person or like read self-help books, whatever it is. And hopefully we don't lose people and they're like, oh God, here we go. But I think just like the whole like raising your vibration or like something like that.
Your frequency.
Yeah. It's all just about kind of, if you're putting out a good vibe, good things come to you. And I feel like if you have low vibe all the time, you might be like the type of person where when one bad thing happens to you, your reaction is, of course this happens to me. Like, of course, like things like this would happen to me. And like, it's almost like if you're doing low vibe things a lot, you kind of get this like stuck in this cycle of just like bad things happening or like bad luck happening. So it's like if you kind of are conscious of them, make an effort to maybe reduce the amount of low vibe things, try to increase your high vibe things, which we'll also share a few of those with you, then it's like maybe you can turn around your own karma or your own luck a little bit as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think it just goes into like what you're thinking about is what you notice. Yeah. And whether it's you're thinking of it as like what you're thinking about is what you're attracting or just like that's the way your brain works where you're starting to point out these things. I remember being a teenager and I would be like keeping track of every bad thing that happened to me throughout the day just to prove how like shitty that day was being. And so I'd be like, okay, what's next? What's the bad thing? Yeah. Whereas if, you're like, what's the next amazing thing that's going to happen? Your day looks completely different in the story that you're telling yourself. Even like if you go for a walk and you're like, I want to see things that are yellow, you'll probably see way more yellow things on that walk than you ever would have just because you're open to it and looking for it. Like my mom loved Pedro Pascal, and now that she knows him, she sees him everywhere, and he's been at events that we've been at. And, we go to film festivals. He had films at those film festivals. And she's like, he was there that whole time and I didn't even notice. But then it's like, once you're looking out for it, you do notice it. But then it, like I was saying with my teenage angst, it works the other way. Where if it's like you're looking for shitty reasons to exist, like you will find it no problem.
Yeah. No, that's such a good reminder. And like, real talk, people. That's the way it is. So
exactly. You can have a good day or a bad day. Like, whatever you want. I think like the first thing that I saw on TikTok regarding this low vibe thing is true crime podcasts. And there was like a discourse in the comments about people being like, of course that's low vibe because it's about people getting killed, which like, yeah, true. But it's like, I think the way it's presented is it could be affecting you and you don't even realize.
Yeah,
I think that's the way it's framed in the low vibe thinking, where if you only listen to true crime podcasts, like I listen to them and I'm guilty of this, it's like you see that stuff everywhere. And maybe that's positive. Maybe it's keeping you safer, but it still is changing the way you think about the world.
Yeah, definitely. Sort of similar, but not quite, is something I've cut out of my life. And it's on TikTok, people are saying watching the news, because a lot of the time it's just like bad news all the time. So it's one thing to be aware of what's going on and in the know and to be educated, but then it's another thing to just constantly be watching CP24 all the time. Yeah, exactly. Where it's just like headlines of bad news happening. But a personal example for me, and something I cut out because I was like, this is low vibe, is following here in Toronto. We have so many like social media accounts that are like things to do in the city, and you know, it's like local news. So we have BlogTO, we have Narcity Canada, we have Curiosity Toronto, and like all the major cities have different branches of these, and it just shares local things. But through the pandemic, I found they were constantly just talking about pandemic related things, crime. Like we have had a lot of like bad things happening on our transit lately, and these things are the first to like blow them up, to report them, to like, you know, show the video content of it. And it's like, I do not need to be seeing this, because it's kind of, it is bringing my vibe down, but it's also like making me afraid to like leave my house. And like this is a very high impact, low vibe thing that I do not want in my life. So that's another thing. So for you, it might be just the news, maybe it's local things, but that's another thing where it's like, you might not realize how much it's impacting you, but if it's all you're seeing when you're scrolling through social media, it's killing the vibe.
Yeah. Well, I think social media especially can be a big source of bad vibes. Like I have a friend who he unsubscribed from everything negative on Reddit, because he's like, I used to be subscribed to like r/public freakouts and r/, you know, and it's not life or death. You're not seeing tragedy unfold, but he's like, but it was just people like having a bad day. And then I was watching it and laughing, and it didn't make me feel better. It made me feel worse. So he's like, now I only follow like r/puppies and things like that. And it's the same. Like I had friends over the pandemic who I deleted off Facebook because I was like, I can't, you're bringing the vibe down. With the content you're posting. And there were similar accounts. Like in Toronto, we have an account called Six Buzz that's like not even news. It's just like cultural happenings, I guess. And just the comment section, I was like, I can't not look at the comment section. So I just need to unfollow and accept that, because it's driving me crazy. And it's the same for TikTok. Like if you're on TikTok and your algorithm is feeding you things that are making you unhappy, get off of TikTok.
I see so many like court trials, like, you know, so many things where I'm just like, I do stop and watch, and that's why I keep getting more, because I'm like, wait, what's going on? But then all of a sudden it's all I'm seeing on TikTok, and I'm like, this is low vibe, like 100%. But I think that's almost in the sense where it's like low vibe because it's almost too much reality, you know, where it's like, I don't want this to become my reality, because these are very real things. But I feel just like doom scrolling on TikTok or Instagram, like you were saying, Tag, is low vibe, even if you're consuming a lot of positive content or like things that aren't downers. And I even think the same about like reality TV, trash TV. Like these are also low vibe things where it's like, it's okay to consume them in moderation, but I feel like they're low vibe because they're so far off from reality that it makes you feel like crap without you even realizing it, you know. Like I've said this many times on the podcast, but my bad mood days correspond or like align with my high screen time days, because I just feel like mush from scrolling on TikTok for hours and hours, or watching Love Island like multiple episodes in a row. I've literally learned Love Island's probably the only reality TV show I watch, and I'm like, I can only watch 2 episodes back to back because they're long. But after that, I either get a headache, like my body is telling me, do not watch any more of this. And I feel it's just because it's like you're consumed in this other reality that, I don't know, makes you like lose perspective of like real life and actual life, and becomes low vibe as a result.
Yeah, I'm very passionate about which TV shows I watch for certain moods. So it's like there are some shows where if I'm like, I need to be lazy, lounge out, I've got shows for that. Like Euphoria, I watched that all on a lazy day. And, you know, Euphoria is not a very motivating show. And it was perfect. Like Jersey Shore, I'll watch that like the day after going out. I'm like, I'm staying in my PJs all day, watch that. But then for days where I need motivation, I'm like, I need to be particular. I'm watching things that inspire me, curate
Mad
the vibe.
Men.
Yeah, Mad Men hypes me up. 30 Rock hypes me up. Even like Gilmore Girls because, you
it's
know.
like a feel good.
Yeah, it's a nice vibe. Things are curated, that sort of thing. But it's like if all you watch is the news or, I don't know, Vanderpump Rules
all the time.
Yeah, it's like that's how you see the world, and that's how you think you should act too, which is especially with Jersey Shore. That's problematic.
Yeah, definitely. I think another thing I saw, the example I was giving you guys where I was like, wow, I didn't realize that was a low vibe thing, but I resonate with this. Somebody on TikTok said over caffeinating. And I feel this goes back to last week's episode where we were talking about, on Instagram anyway, I posted how it was like we're recovering girl bosses because that was just like the cultural phenomenon as we started working as like millennial women. It's like girl power. Yeah. But hustle culture was also like booming at this time.
Yeah.
But I think along with that came like the glamorization of coffee and how it's like a good thing if you're constantly drinking coffee because it means you're working hard or like you're like energizing yourself to work hard, or it's like, oh my god, I have like my coffee's cold, I've been so busy working. Like it was like something you'd like flex about, which is weird when you think about it now. But really, like when I think of things that make me feel anxious, coffee's one of them.
Yeah.
Like it's like a very low vibe thing, and it's like if all I'm doing is drinking coffee, I'm just feeding this anxiety, you know what I mean? Like, and I can still be really productive and like really hustling at work and doing a good job on a project I'm working on. I'm probably doing better actually if I'm drinking water and like actually giving myself energy rather than like this very short term like caffeinated buzz kind of thing. So that's another one. Over caffeinating. And maybe it's like Coke, maybe it's like, you know, maybe it's not coffee for you, it's just like some sort of caffeine that you're gonna crash from.
Yeah. And same goes, I think, with alcohol. I feel like alcohol, like caffeine, seems like a high vibe thing. So it's like, get the party going, give me that energy. But it's like, no. And much like caffeine, you crash from that. I think the only time I get like a high vibe kind of energy from alcohol is if I'm making like a nice cocktail, like if I'm being conscious about my consumption. And the same probably goes for coffee. Whereas if you're like, I'm just going to do a shot, or I don't know,
down and dirty.
Yeah, I need a whiskey on the rocks. It's like, that's not high vibe. That's very low vibe.
Yeah.
So alcohol too. I mean, there is this phenomenon I keep seeing on TikTok called like rotting. And it's basically everything you would do rotting is low vibe. And so the idea is like you just lay in bed all day, you like veg out, eat unhealthy, you just sleep all day, you don't shower, you're on your phone. And it's like everyone's got to have like a rotting day here and there.
Yeah.
But not every day.
Yeah.
And so if you're like, why am I so miserable? Maybe take a look at some of the things that we're talking about. And you're like, oh yeah, I rot all day. I have like 5 cups of coffee and then I drink a bottle of wine every night. Like those sorts of things could be linked to it. I also think like sad and angry songs. This was something we just talked about.
I'm guilty of those. Like really guilty of it.
Yeah. If you're like, why am I so angry right now?
Yeah.
And then you look at your playlist and you're like, oh yeah, I'm listening to like angry hits of 2000 or something. Yeah. Or like this morning I was listening to Vienna by Billy Joel and I was just crying. And I'm like, do I need to be crying right now? Well, I listened to Vienna, so yes, I do. But it's like, you know, these things affect your mood, much like the movies and TV show that you consume.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in ways that you maybe don't even register.
Totally. Like I have such a soft spot for like really sad, depressing songs.
Yeah.
But when I think about it, I'm like, yeah, this is low vibe. Like,
Yeah.
or if all I listen to is like breakup songs, it's like, girl, no wonder you haven't been in a relationship. Like you're glamorizing the breakup of a relationship, not the like falling in love part of it, you know? And I think what's interesting about music, and this is something else that'll connect to something else on the list, sorry, but is the lyrics can get stuck in your head and you almost like repeat them to yourself.
It's like a manifestation.
Yeah, and it can become like a mantra a little bit, and like you're not even aware of what you're saying. And I think what it ties into is just speaking badly about yourself, even if it's in a joking way. So if you're somebody who's always saying like, oh my god, I'm so dumb, or like again, it could even be like, of course this would happen to me when something bad happens. Like you're reaffirming something about yourself, even if you don't think you're being serious. If you say it to yourself constantly, like every time something bad happens, every time you make a mistake, and that's again what you focus on, like that's what you're going to continue to see and whatnot. So I really think being mindful of your words, if it's through song lyrics, if it's through the things you say to yourself, the things you say to other people, like this can really impact your vibe. And something that I was thinking about actually when I was thinking about how I talk to myself, like I really do feel like I'm positive in how I talk to myself, and I really do think that shapes kind of how I see things and like my outlook, which is good. But I was watching Shay Mitchell on Call Her Daddy because of course I was. I love Shay Mitchell. And she was saying how words have so much weight and how people don't realize that. So she's like, she makes sure everything she says is like positive, and like she does not just even like jokingly talk about herself in bad ways, because it can like really manifest to come true. And if you say it to yourself enough, you start to believe it. So it's like, okay, if you know that, make sure you're saying positive things to yourself. Make sure you're listening to positive music if it's getting stuck in your head and you're repeating it to yourself all day every day. Like words have weight.
Well, it's the same too with like complaining about work.
Yep.
There are people that I work with where the only time we have a conversation is to like complain about things. And as much as it's like, work sucks sometimes, like you got to complain, you got to get it off your chest. But like it's also not productive. All of these conversations I have are not conversations starting looking for a solution. And I don't even think these people necessarily even want a solution. They just want to complain, you know? And it's the same with like family drama, friend drama, relationship drama, like shit talking people, that kind of stuff. It's low vibe. It brings you down. It's not solution oriented, and it makes people not want to talk to you. Like if all you do at work is complain and shit talk other people on your team are not going to trust you. They're not going to think that you're a team player. And that can affect you in the long run.
Totally. I have a personal example of this from my last job. I ate lunch. So this was like still in office days. And I ate lunch with one group of girls every single day. And they were my ride or dies at work. Like I loved them. But we had one girl who would always sit with us. And she absolutely hated a guy on my team. And she would just shit talk him like for the whole lunch hour every single day. And next thing I knew, I had zero patience for this guy. I despised him. I really, really disliked him. But when I thought about it, like, and this is more like in hindsight, because in the moment, I was just like, he's so annoying. Sucks. He's the worst. But I was like, I literally spent, say, 1 hour a day, not 7 days a week, 5 days a week. So 5 hours a week, just listening to somebody totally shit on this guy. Of course, that impacted like my perception of him and like influenced how I felt about him, and that's not fair to this guy, you know? So it did become like an unattractive trait for this girl that was shit talking. But then I was like, I didn't realize how this shit talking or this complaining about work or complaining about one person at work in particular, like how that actually impacts me and like impacts the vibe. Like it's absolutely crazy. And I think it's the same with your friends. Like if you get together with your friends and you're just like, I don't know, talking about all the bad, like, again, it's good and healthy to like rant about your problems. But I really think, again, going back to our last point about words having weight, like if your friends also are like, yeah, girl, that sucks. And like, sometimes you need somebody to like validate your feelings and whatnot. But I feel like all of my friends, I love them so much because they're the first ones to be like, you go girl, or like, positive affirmations. And it's like their words also have weight, you know? And it's like family, even if your family's like constantly supporting you in the decisions you're making, that's going to make you feel good and like, you know, encourage you to make good decisions or whatever. So I don't know. I think it is really important to be mindful of not just your vibe, but the vibe of other people around you and how it impacts your vibe. Definitely.
Yeah. One thing that I've been thinking of in my life, a way that I keep things low vibe, is I consider myself like a planner.
Okay.
And to me, I'm like, that seems high vibe, but I think that I'm an over planner. And so it makes me an overthinker, and that I'm living for the future instead of in the present, which turns out to be low vibe, because it's like I'm not actually enjoying what's happening in my life now. Instead, I'm overthinking about things in the future under the guise of being organized.
Yeah.
Which can also be negative.
Yeah. And I think on the opposite hand, living in the past can also be a low vibe thing, where if you're constantly dwelling on something that happened that you have literally no control changing, like, or you're anxious about something that could happen in the future, like all of these things, it's like, these are killing the vibe, and you just kind of need to, it's very hard, but like just live in the now and enjoy the moment. That's high vibe. This is kind of going back a few like examples ago, but you were talking about alcohol and like things like that.
Yeah.
I think even if it's just like casual drinking, whatever, but where my mind went was also like anything addictive, I feel is very low vibe. So it could be alcohol, it could be smoking, you know, those are like classic examples of addiction for me. And you guys are like, yeah, girl, we could have told you this is low vibe. Shopping. I feel like anything that you're addicted to, you become like you're doing it out of like you don't even know why you're doing it anymore. And I feel like it's sometimes to fill a void or something. So for me, if it's like I shop when I'm having a bad day, you know, that's low vibe. It's not like I'm shopping because I actually need something or because I enjoy shopping. It's I do enjoy shopping, but you know, it's like I don't know, it comes from a place that's low vibe. So, and the other thing, especially with shopping, but it could even be like drinking, anything else, is I'm like chasing something. So it's like I was really, really bad with opening TikTok, then opening my Sephora app to buy every beauty product that was trending. But it's like the thing with shopping is you can never have everything, and you can never achieve it. There's always going to be something else that's trending, something else you need, something else that works really well to clear up this person's skin that you have to try. Like there's no end to it. So that's why it also became extremely low vibe. And that's when I was like, we need to put an end to this, because there is no end. So I choose no more. This can't have control over me.
Great. Well, I think now that we've established what are some low vibe things, I think we can go into some things that are high vibe. So if you've identified some behaviors in yourself, you might be like, okay, that's great, I can try and stop it, but like it's hard. We understand that it's hard. So we have some things that if getting rid of some things might be difficult for you, you can add in some of these high vibe things. And even that, I think, can make a big difference.
Totally. I feel all these high vibe things are like the definition of self-care and things we've definitely talked about a million times before. But the first thing that comes to mind for me is gratitude. And like I start every morning journaling 3 things I'm grateful for. And I've done this now for the past 2 years. And I really do think it helps, because to your earlier point, Tag, if you're having a bad day and all you see are the bad things that are happening, more bad things are going to continue to happen. So if you just interrupt that, being like, nope, I'm choosing to look at this differently, and like give gratitude for something that went well today, and you focus on that, I think that can really change the narrative. But sometimes it takes a lot of effort to find the good thing. So it is definitely a practice. And that's why I like kind of falling into a habit of gratitude journaling every morning.
Yeah. Well, we at my work, we say one thing we're grateful for every morning. And it's the kind of thing where now when I see something amazing, I think to myself, oh, I've got to remember that so I can say I'm grateful for it. So it's like what we were talking about at the beginning. If you're like, I'm looking for the color yellow, you will see it everywhere. If you're looking for things to like complain about to your friends and your
Mm-hmm.
coworkers, you will find things. But if you're looking for things to be grateful for, you will be inundated with that.
Yeah.
I think one thing that really helps me get my vibe up, and I did this just this weekend, I was having like a raw week where I was like, you know what? I need it. I'm exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be like the laziest girl in the world and be happy about it. But then one day I was like, nope, the rot's over.
Yeah.
I can emerge a butterfly from my cocoon. And the first thing I did was tidy my space.
Yes.
And so it's like, if you're like, God, my life is so shitty, everything's awful. If you look around, I guarantee you will see like 5 things that need cleaning.
Yeah.
And for one, once you tidy, it gives you like the accomplishment of checking something off your to-do list, which I find very rewarding and motivating. But it also just gives you the space to be. Like if you don't have a spot to sit because you've got dirty clothes on every chair in your apartment, you're not giving yourself the space to be grateful for things.
Yeah.
If you have to like push your, I don't know why all I'm thinking of is laundry, but if you have to push your laundry aside to like get into bed, that's not going to be a relaxing sleep. That's not going to,
Yeah.
help you start the next day on the best foot. Whereas if you wake up in a clean space, you're like, okay, here I go. I'm ready to conquer the day.
Yeah. I love that. I was thinking of how, that feeling when you say you were like sick and you've been sick for like a week, and then that day when you finally have enough energy and you're like, I'm gonna clean the sheets, I'm gonna like do my dishes because I've just spent the past week unable to take care of myself, and just how much more human you feel. Then you're like, I'm gonna wash my hair, I'm gonna wash all the germs off. Like that's the feeling we're going for without being sick. It's like coming out of that rot stage or phase and just being like, yes, I'm emerging, I'm a human again. I love it. I think we talked a lot about living in the present, and I think something I don't really do that much of, but it would be a very high vibe thing, is meditating. And I feel like my meditation is always through yoga. I'm very like focused on kind of like a moving meditation. I'm only thinking about my body and like the yoga poses as I go through a yoga practice. But I think that's something you can try. And I think the thing about meditating is you could literally only do it for 5 minutes. So maybe it's like while you're drinking, a morning beverage, if it's coffee, if it's tea, drinking water, whatever, if it's on, I don't know, just like sitting there quietly by yourself and just like appreciating the present moment. Another thing that I think is super grounding and almost meditative is just getting outside and getting fresh air, getting into the sunshine. I know nature is very like grounding, so it could be going to a park. People are like, just put your feet in the grass, it'll cure a hangover. Literally anything to get outside is like pressing the reset button. And I never realized that until I've gone a few days without intentionally getting outside, where I'm like, what's wrong with me? As soon as I get outside, I'm like, oh my God, I feel so much better. So don't discount that, get out there. It's high vibe.
Yeah. And I think similarly to how the media you consume can make you low vibe, it can also make you high vibe. Like we have a couple playlists on our Spotify that are like manifesting playlists, or like I'm the main character, or this morning, it's a Sunday, so I was listening to like our Sunday reset, and they're all positively curated songs that are supposed to like get you in the best headspace, get you pumped up,
raise the vibe.
Exactly. And whether it's like you're listening to it while you clean or while you dance or while you get your makeup done, whatever it is, I think that can be a big change. I find like, especially when working, if I'm like, today is just not going well, I'll just change the soundtrack. And whether it's like I'm listening now to film scores or I'm listening to lo-fi or whatever it is, just changing it can kind of change the feeling about the whole day.
Yeah, I love that. I know we talked about words of affirmation, the things you're saying to yourself, also things that you're saying to and hearing from your friends and family. So just wanted to mention that again under the high vibe things to work into your routine or whatever. But another thing that is so simple is laughing. And I'm a big laugher. Like I laugh at myself. I'm a goofy person. I like to joke around, but like it's so cliche to be like, laughter's the best medicine or whatever. But I'm like, it literally is. Like if I am having a bad day and I choose to just like laugh at the things that are happening to me rather than be like, oh my God, why?
Yeah.
Like it just makes it so much lighter. And even at work, like sometimes when things get so dumb, all you can do is laugh at them because you're like, what the heck is happening? Like, you know, but if you just laugh at it, I feel like that can really raise the vibe and just, I don't know. It doesn't stop bad things from happening, but it like just brings lightness to it, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. I think the last thing on our list too, we've already kind of talked about, is just hydration and eating whole foods. The opposite of rotting.
Yeah, exactly.
Bringing yourself back to life, eating fruits and veggies, not just having a plate full of like fried brown
chips.
food. Yeah, chips, candy, sugar. And then hydration to combat all the over-caffeinating.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I'm sitting here drinking nice coffee and now I'm like
don't over
thinking about my choices. I'm like, am I over-caffeinating right now? Whatever. Doesn't matter. Like we said, it's okay to do once in a while.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, Or I think it's good to reflect if you're feeling bad or if you're feeling bad all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an important thing to remember that you do have control over these things. You know, like I feel like if you're someone that kind of goes through life or has phases where you're like, everything's happening to me.
Yeah.
I think that can be something you can spiral with and fall into a trap thinking that way, where it's like, no, you know, you do have a lot more control over your mood and things that happen, probably more than you realize. So hopefully just being more mindful of these low vibe things, maybe practicing some more of these high vibe things, you can turn things around for yourself.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that is it, guys. Thank you so much for listening. We drop a new episode every Tuesday. So if you liked this episode, make sure you subscribe, follow us, rate us, leave a review, all the things, and come back next Tuesday for our next episode. We also have so many self-care related episodes from past weeks. So if you liked this episode, definitely go give those a listen as well. We're also on social media at our golden 20s. That's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Pinterest. Pinterest is high vibe, in my opinion. Check us out there. And we also have Spotify playlists, like Tegan said, lots of high vibe playlists for any mood, anything that you're doing. We have good vibes curated for you over there. But that is it. We will see you next Tuesday. Bye.